Well, today we're going to be talking about a little bit I called it Israel and Hamas, but we're more talking about the end times, generally speaking. We live in very interesting times. And for that reason, I think that I'm going to refer to the rest of every time I say Hamas from here on out, it's going to be Hamas, because I think that that's funnier anyways. So we're going to be talking about Israel and Hamas this morning. And we live in very interesting days. There's a lot of stuff happening. And we're constantly assaulted on the news, aren't we? All the different stuff that's going on. And they put it in the most negative light that they humanly possibly can. And okay, that's them. But what about us in the church? Well, before we say anything about the end times, I do need to mention this. Beware of end times experts. There's a lot of people out there that think that they know everything about the end times. They've worked it out into chronology, and just be careful. Because it's easy to say, I know, I'm an end times expert. It's really hard when the thing happens, we'll know if you were right or wrong. You know what I mean? It's hard to kind of verify that the person's theory was right, and everybody has their own theory. And some people have made their entire ministries revolve around the end times. I think it's important that we keep get good knowledge about the end times. But I think it's a mistake if we make our entire existence about the end times. Just like I think it's a mistake to make any one point of theology your main driving force. So just be careful about those end times experts. Always approach really all of the Bible with humility, but specifically approach the end times with humility. It's definitely one of those things that's very easy to get misled. It's very easy to get your priorities and your focus wrong. So things are happening in Israel, in case you didn't know, in case you are some kind of a hermit and does not watch the news or anything. I understand, there are some other people like that. So if you don't know, things are definitely happening with Israel. They are in a war, a terrorist war. And so what does that mean for the end times? What does that mean for the church? What does that mean for us? Let's try and break this down bit by bit. Now, let me give a little bit of a disclaimer. First off, the things that are happening in the Middle East are disgusting. I am not going to be commenting on that. Okay, I'm not talking about the morality of the thing itself. We all understand everything that's happening over there is disgusting. The second little disclaimer is there's a lot of different people on news and stuff that are trying to pass it off as this is a war about land or this is a war about this or that. No, this is a hate war. That's actually what the whole war is about. Hamas is very much so a hateful antagonizer. They are terrorists. This is completely hate-motivated. I know you might hear other things on the news, but no, if you actually listen to the Hamas leaders, it's very clear that they are hate-driven, okay? So a lot of fake stuff going on in the news about how it's not a hate war. No, it is a hate war. And then the third little disclaimer I want to give is, traditionally growing up in the church kind of tried to have a culture of fear with the end time stuff. They tried to teach fear, and they tried to move people into fear. And I don't think it's ever a wise idea to operate from a place of fear. Revelation is not a book that was meant to scare the world. It was a book that was meant to give hope to the church. And so for that reason, I'm not going to be trying to use Revelation for fear tactics. I just want to give clarity on the end times and hope in the midst of a very chaotic time. I don't think anybody is going to argue with me here. We live in a very chaotic time. And so the main point I want you to get from this is that we don't have to be afraid, okay? We don't have to be afraid. The war might come over here. That might happen. And this might escalate into a nuclear war. That might happen. There's a lot of things that might happen. Okay, so I'm not trying to blind you and say whatever. The end is definitely near. I'm not trying to mislead you, but what I am saying is we don't have to be afraid. The culture is very much so afraid. They operate in fear. They're always worrying about stuff. We don't have to do that. We really don't. And that's not even the main point of where we should be going. So let's go to the real basic idea of just establishing that we are, in fact, in the end times. In the book of Joel, there's this prophecy given, and it's quoted in the book of Acts. So in Acts chapter 2, it says this. This is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. The disciple Peter is speaking. And it will be in the last days, says God, that I will pour out my spirit on all people. Then your sons and your daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. Notice he said there very, very clearly, it'll be in the last days that these things happen. So this prophecy he's talking about was actually fulfilled that same day in the book of Acts. So it's not something we should be looking for its fulfillment in the future. It happened. That happened. And it ushered in the last days. So we are currently in the last days. And the thing about that is, that's only bad news. The only way that that's bad news is if this is all there is. If your life consists of no more than this life here, then that's very bad news. But after you're not a kid anymore, you start having pains in your body, and you start having problems that kind of mount up around you. And it's a good thing that this isn't all that there is. It's a point of hope. Thank God I don't have to go stumbling through this life making the same stupid choices for the rest of my life, right? And so we are in the last days, and this is not a thing to be scared of. We know that even if you do experience fear about the end times, or about the rapture, or about the time of tribulation, anything that you have fear about, remember, even if it's your death, remember that when that time comes, God will walk with you through it. You're afraid now because it's not yet time. When it's your time, and we go through that, God gives courage at the time that's necessary. So don't get overly concerned if you're panicky or have, late night sweats thinking about this kind of stuff. You got to trust God. When the time is right, He'll lead you through it. The next thing is that I need to make a difference between the last days and the day of the Lord. So the last days are the time of human history when things are starting to wind down. They are getting towards the return of Christ, the new heavens and the new earth. It's the end period of human history. The day of the Lord is not that. Some people will think of the day of the Lord as the end of the end, but that's not very accurate, because things happen after the 7 years of tribulation. Things happen after the rapture. There's still more in the history line, so it's not really the end of the end. The day of the Lord can real broadly be said as it's the day of God's wrath. In the Old Testament, there was many days of the Lord, such as when Israel was exiled from their homeland. That was the day of the Lord. There's a future day of the Lord. There has been days of the Lord between there. So the day of the Lord is a time when God's wrath, both in past and coming, a time of God when God's wrath is shown. So there are some people who say something along the lines of this. Well, are there any prophecies left before the return of Jesus? That's a little bit tricky. The answer is both yes and no. So the Bible makes it clear that the Jesus' return will come like a thief. It does make clear. But it does give two different things that it says are signs that have to happen first. And the first sign that it gives is the lawless man, and the second sign it says is the great falling away. So in 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3, it says this: "For you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. When they say peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape." And then if you go to 2 Thessalonians, it says, "Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered to Him, we ask you, brothers and sisters, not to be easily upset or troubled, either by a prophecy or by a message, or by a letter supposedly from us, alleging that the day of the Lord has come. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way." Now he's going to tell you the two signs I was just talking about. "For that day will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed." So yes, you could say that all the Old Testament prophecies referring to the time have come to pass. Yes, but these two things have not yet come to pass. Okay, so there are, you could say yes, but also you could say no. The man doomed to destruction. So we can kind of put all that together and say, okay, there's going to be a time of suffering, and that's going to get worse and worse and worse. In the rest of the world, most Christianity has to deal with persecution. And one day, that will probably likely come here as well. The chances of us being an island for forever is just not real high. But it is going to come, and that's not something we have to be scared of, because when the time comes, God gives us the courage to face it. Okay? So right now what you can do is seek God. Everybody has their own temptations in their own lifetime, okay? You might look at people in a third world country and say, they are such good Christians because they've had to face death. All of us, have the exact same opportunity. We can let the fear of our culture, the apathy of our culture, or the lack of religion in our culture persuade us spiritually. We are facing the exact same temptation. It's just expressed in a different way. we are very much so at war, spiritually speaking, in America, just like in everywhere in the world. So, moving on from there, Matthew says, and we read part of this morning, but he's talking to his disciples about the time of the end, and he says this: "You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed. Don't be surprised." St. Peter says this. Don't be alarmed, or 1 Peter says this. Don't be alarmed when trials and temptations come upon you. Don't be surprised. Don't be caught off guard. Because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. So this is exactly what we saw with the whole Ukraine and Russia thing, right? They're all over there fighting, and everybody's talking about World War III. It's just a matter of time, everybody was saying. It's just maybe today, maybe tomorrow, and everybody's living in panic and fear. And then out of nowhere, this surprise war with Israel happened that nobody even saw coming. And that's exactly what we're talking about in Matthew 24. Wars and rumors of war. People are talking about war over here, but then this war over here comes, and then there's that war, and people are talking about this, and people are so panic-stricken. So with that being said, we can move on to a few specific questions. I know there's always been a lot of discussion on who is the Antichrist. It's been something that's really been a big feature throughout Christian history. And there's been a lot of different ideas that people have had. During one period of time, the Pope was called the Antichrist. During another period of Christian history, different Protestants were called the Antichrist by the Catholic Church. So there was that. A couple years ago, President Obama was the Antichrist. A couple years after that, President Trump was the Antichrist. I mean, everybody always has their idea of who the Antichrist is. It's this person, it's this person. And you got to watch out, because there's always going to be those kinds of theories being slung around, okay? I know that our culture gets real into the mudslinging with politics. Let's not do that as the church. Let's kind of refrain from that, especially next year is an election year. Don't get caught up in the mudslinging. You can stand for something without having to muddy somebody else, right? Okay, so with that being said, the Antichrist, the thing about the Antichrist is that there are many Antichrists. There are many Antichrists. Okay? So don't look for, is this person? Because here's the thing. Satan doesn't know when the end is, right? And every generation has an Antichrist. Every generation does. But it's not according to Satan's timing. It's according to God's timing. 1 John 2:18, I did not write this one down, but in 1 John 2:18 he talks about how there are many Antichrists. I really wish I would have put it up there, but I put it in quotations, which is my way of telling myself, don't read this. So I guess I had a reason for why I did that when I wrote this. So I don't know. Don't read this, Michael. But anyways, there are going to be Antichrists all the time that come up, but it's really something that we don't know until it's the time. So that takes us to the next common question you hear a lot nowadays is, what about a nuclear war? Is there going to be a nuclear war? What does the Bible say? Well, it's very possible that there could be a nuclear war. That's not something we need to be afraid of, though. And there's a few reasons. First off, if there is a nuclear war, you're likely going to be dead before you have to worry too much about it. But, I mean, with that being said, even if, for whatever reason, we know that life will continue on. Okay? Here's the thing. Even if there is a nuclear war, maybe there will be, but not all life will be destroyed. Because people are not in control, God is. And God has said some things that are going to happen before the end. So he will preserve people from killing themselves off. As stupid as we are, as big of issues as we get ourselves into, God will have his way. If you don't believe me, read Genesis. That is a book about people constantly trying to destroy themselves and God constantly turning it towards the good. So, yes, absolutely there could be a nuclear war. Not all life will be killed. Revelation talks about a few things, such as mass extinction of different things. That could very well be caused by pollution, and not that kind of pollution. I'm talking about ground pollution through nuclear war, and different things like that. Absolutely. So with that being said, though, once again, the Bible doesn't tell us everything. The Bible doesn't tell us everything that's going to happen. It just tells us what we need to know. So with that being said, yes, it is totally possible that there could be a nuclear war. There are two words that we need to really pay attention to that the Bible uses when it's talking about the end times. The first one is alarmed. Alarmed. And it always talks about this word in the do not do category. Hey, don't let yourself be alarmed. And the idea behind the word, it has a lot of different ideas, but I'll try to summarize it here. to let yourself be afraid. Like in 2 Thessalonians, he said, don't let yourself be alarmed that the day of the Lord has already come. These are the signs that have to happen first. So don't let yourself be alarmed, moved to fear. And so then a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid, but I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of, maybe the next life. I'm afraid of, and in a large part, that's pretty normal. It's pretty normal to be afraid of death. We are physical creatures, and we experience physical things, such as fear. But remember, when it's your time, God will give you the strength when it's your time. So if you're worried about, when I'm there, I'm scared of what heaven will be like. I'm scared of standing before God Almighty. What a fearful thing. Understandable, because you're human. When you get to the next life, that fear won't be there. It won't be a deciding factor for you. So, don't let yourself be overcome with fear. Another idea of being alarmed is when you are caught off guard, such as when you are not ready for the master when he comes home to his house. In this aspect, it's more talking about the way of your lifestyle. Are you living in light of the end times, or are you just living however you want? Are you living where it's okay if I, gossip or tear somebody else down, or mudsling we were just talking about? Well, okay, but is that really living in light of the end? Well, no. So another idea of the word alarmed is just being upset, easily being moved to being upset. It's something that is consuming you. And the word that is contrasted with this is something that we are told to do, so don't be alarmed, but rather be alert. Be alert. What does alert mean? It means a lot of different things, but you could basically say it means to be aware. Spiritually speaking, you are aware. You don't have your head in the dirt, but it's more than that. It's not just about being aware of news. It's about you personally and your walk with God being aware of where you are, where you're going, what's your spiritual state, being aware of your lifestyle, being aware of the enemy's plans that he is trying to actively destroy you. Remember that when you go through various trials, be it your health or family problems or actual persecution. Either way, remember that your enemy is trying anything to tear you down. Anything. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking that a physical debilitation is nothing more than a physical debilitation. Even if it isn't Satan directly intervening in your life, even if it isn't, Satan is still using it to intervene in your life. And God is trying to use it to grow your faith in him. So there's always a war. Okay, don't let yourself be misled here. And we are told to be alert in these things. So I do want to kind of, with that being said, a lot of times when people talk about being alert, what they think up here is hopping on every end times theory that you hear. It doesn't matter if it's on Christian television, if it's on Fox News, or if it's in a book. Don't just hop on end times theories after another. Be careful. There's a lot of people who are saying a lot of different things, and you don't have to agree with all of them. And a lot of, especially nowadays, people say, I heard a word from God. And that doesn't mean that you have to believe them. That means that they believe them. Test it against the word and see. Test it. Because as far as I can tell, the situation going on right now in the Middle East is not the situation that Revelations is talking about. And I'll get to that in just a minute. So, what can we expect in these times? Well, there's a lot of different things that we can expect, but I made a simple list, I think. We can expect war. At this time, we can expect wars to stop. There's no going back to the normal or anything like that. The wars will continue. There will be famines variously throughout the coming years, be it little famines or big famines. There will be more famines. People will not solve all the world's problems. I know that they talk about it a lot in the news. They won't. You can expect fear. We have a culture of fear right now. You can expect that to keep going on. You can expect people to be moved and motivated in fear. Don't let yourself be caught up. Especially if you have anxiety, watch out, because they will get you caught up, where your anxiety will feed off of their anxiety. Don't get caught up. Another thing is you're just going to see a lot of the false prophets, false messages, false words, false churches, false people. You see just a lot of false, generally speaking. Watch out that you're not taking guard, because false don't look false. You know what I mean? It's called the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's not something where you see it and you think, that's false. They're people that you like. They're charismatic. They're people that smile. They're people who get up there and you can trust. This is someone I'd vote for. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a person. Okay? You don't have to watch for the guy that nobody believes in. You have to watch out for the guy that everybody's flocking to. because that's how deception works. You don't know that you're being deceived. So be very careful about this kind of stuff. But the list goes on. It says the love of many will grow cold because people are going to be self-serving. They're not going to care about other people. That's going to spread into the church. It already has, but it's going to continue. There will always be, and Jesus said it like this, the wheat will be left with the tares until the end, and then he will harvest. So it's something that you have to always expect, but don't go to people expecting them to betray you. If you do that, you're never going to trust anybody. Another thing that you're going to see is you're going to see people falling away. You're going to see a line in the sand between people who genuinely love and serve God and people who don't and are just putting forth the motions. And they won't always be the ones who are in church. Sometimes you're going to see people who don't go to church who are the people who are genuine. It's going to be a very crazy time to be alive. And this is only going to continue. It's been going on for 2,000 years. I don't know if it's going to go on for another 5,000 years, but I do know that these are things we can expect. And there will be persecution that continues, as there already is. So don't let any of this bother you or get you off guard. Now we can turn to Revelation, and it says in chapter 16, it says, "So they assembled the kings at the place called in Hebrew Armageddon." This is talking about what people refer to now as the Battle of Armageddon. Or some people say as the battles of Armageddon. But if you notice, before the battle happens, the kings are assembled at Armageddon. Remember this, because there's talk about, is this the Battle of Armageddon? The kings have not yet assembled. The man of lawlessness has not been revealed. Like, you see what I mean? There's things that haven't happened yet. So this is likely not that. It could be. Things could always change. Things have a habit of changing quite regularly, quite quickly. So, this is true for today. It might not be true for tomorrow. But either way, in Revelation 16, it says a couple things that are going to happen first, before the kings assemble at Armageddon. It says that there's going to be sea life dying. All sea life is going to die. So last time I checked, there's still whales and sharks and stuff, so I'm guessing that's not now. Another thing is, as it mentions, this will be after the mark of the beast is given, after it is revealed. The mark of the beast has not yet been revealed. It also says that this is going to be after people have sores on their skin, and they're still cursing God. That has not happened yet either. So we can safely conclude from Revelation itself that this is not the Battle of Armageddon, this event in the Middle East. It might be a precursor, you know what I mean, a prologue to it, but it's not in itself right now at that. So also I want to warn you that Israel might lose its land again. When it says that Israel won't lose its land again, it's talking about in the future. That time hasn't come yet. This, as the current state of things are, it could lose its land again. Okay, that doesn't mean that God's promises have failed. The people of Israel will be preserved. God will not fail. But the land might be lost, at least for a time. Okay, don't let these things trouble you. You're going to hear people say things like, oh, this disproves God, or if God was going to come, he would have come by now. Don't let people dissuade you. Just because some people got certain details wrong doesn't mean that the revelation itself is wrong, okay? Sometimes people just kind of draw their own conclusions when it comes to the end times. And that's why it's very important to come to it with humility. So if you go back to verses 8 through 9, it says, the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun. It was allowed to scorch people with with fire, and people were scorched by the intense heat. So they blasphemed the name of God, who has the power over these plagues, and they did not repent and give him glory. And you might say, well, why would they do this? Well, let's kind of look at our culture for just a second. Everyone knows the end is coming, right? This isn't a surprise. You see it on movies, you hear it in books. They're making a lot of movies about the end of the world when there's zombie apocalypse and all this stuff. Everybody's talking about it, right? And you have scientists who are always talking about global warming and the frogs dying. And they're talking about how all life is going to die. See, everybody knows that the end is coming. They just don't know which end is coming. And, I don't really have an opinion on global warming one way or another, but I know that in the end it is going to get pretty hot when the earth is burned up by fire. So, with that being said, this isn't, once again, something we had to be afraid of. They're consumed with fear by it. But we don't have to be. Okay, yeah, frogs might die off. The weather might get a little bit hotter. But, spoiler, none of us are making it out if you're alive anyways, right? The world will be destroyed. There is no way we can make Earth a perfect utopia. Yeah, try all you want, but it's not going to work. There's always going to be people who get in the way of people. It's going to happen. It always has. It always will. So don't let these things bother you or disrupt you from the truth of the Word. But the thing is, how many of those people who rant and rave about global warming, how many of them have come to the Lord because of it? None. They sit and talk about the problem. That's exactly what Revelations is talking about. These bad things are going to happen. They're not going to change then any more than they change now. Let's assume that global warming is real. Let's just assume. Roll with me, okay? Global warming is real. So don't you think you should get your life right with God? And that's exactly what we see in Revelation. And it's one of those things that, it's a hardness of heart that comes. So there is some good things that are mentioned with the end times. I feel like people don't really highlight on. They like to talk about all the bad things that are going on, but they don't really remember the good things. So just real quick, there's two very specific, not doom and gloom things that are worth remembering. The first is the return of Christ. This is a good thing. This means corrupt leaders, bye-bye. Having problems, having debt, goodbye. That's a good thing. And everybody talks about the return of the Christ only in the negative sense, but it's a good thing too. Anyways, and the second thing is the gospel goes throughout the entire world. That's a good thing too, and this is something that says happens in the end. The gospel goes to all nations. These are good things, but everybody's focusing on the bad things that are going to happen. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering and all those things. Yes, absolutely. But we're going to have pain and suffering in life anyways, and we're all going to die anyways. So, I mean, it's not like there was a new surprise ending. We all saw this coming the moment we were born. And so that takes us to one more thing that people ask a lot about, and that's the mark of the beast. Now, I think the mark of the beast is probably one of the most dangerous things for accumulating, I don't want to use this word, but it's the only one I can think of off my head, conspiracy theories. A lot of people, it was a 5G network or a phone, or there were a lot of different things that people thought the mark of the beast was. And it's important to get a little bit of clarity on the mark of the beast, because I feel like people don't really talk about this, especially the end times experts. Here's the thing. The first thing about the mark of the beast that we are shown from Revelation is going to be intentional. These people are not accidentally getting the mark of the beast. Okay, it's something that people are aware what they're doing. The second thing that I feel like is not really mentioned is that the mark of God comes first in Revelation 7. The mark of the beast is a contrast to the mark of God. God's people will have his seal. Those who do not follow Christ will have the beast's seal. And with that being said, it seems very likely that the mark of the beast is not a literal thing. It's something in here. It seems very likely. I don't want to go into all the reasons why I think so. And once again, if you think differently, that's fine. I'm just, once again, end times expert will know when we get there, right? But either way, it's going to be something that works along the lines of how the COVID vaccine worked. COVID vaccine is not the mark of the beast. Okay? But it's going to work similar to that, where people can't go places, they can't do things, they can't buy things unless they have this mark. And so that might be a physical thing, that might be a spiritual thing. Either way, this is a new dawn of human history, where the stars are thrown down and the sun doesn't give out its light like it's supposed to. This is not like your average Tuesday, okay? This is a whole different time and a whole different situation. So what does that actually look like in practice? I have no idea. I'm not there. Hopefully I will never be there. Hopefully I'll be in heaven. I don't know exactly when in this timeline the rapture happens. Some people say before tribulation, but I think the Bible makes it pretty clear at least after some tribulation. So either way, you're going to have some times of suffering and whatnot. And even if not, you're going to have health problems that come, right? So either way, there's going to be suffering of some sort, and then there's going to be the rapture. So I hope that rapture is before all this dark and creepy stuff happens, because I really don't want to be here. Really don't want to know what's going on there. But anyways, so that takes us to two more issues that I think need to be addressed. The first is, who are the kings of the East? Everybody's talking about this. Well, some people like Greg Laurie have said, well, it's probably China. But the thing is, it says kings of the East, plural. So it's probably not going to be just one nation. It's probably going to be a series. I know that a lot of people have hopped on the Russia as part of that group. But the problem is that's not understanding the context that prophecy was given in. So in the context of those prophecies, it's not talking about the people of Russia. It's talking about a lot closer. And obviously there's you could get into a whole historical study that I won't. I'll save you all the misery. But the long story short is that attaching the Russians to that prophecy has no biblical warrant. It might be the Russians, but there's no warrant for that in Scripture. So once again, I don't think that this alliance that's going on between China and Russia and all that, I don't think that's the kings of the East. I really don't. And they have not assembled at Armageddon. Really makes me think no. So I would admit that it's scary that they're doing this, but I don't think that this is the same thing. But once again, though, it's very unclear who those are, and there might be more than one king. But anyways, and the last question that's worth looking at is, what about a one world order? People have been talking about it for years. They started talking about it again. Between President Biden and Russia, they've been talking about it again. But here's the thing you need to know about the one world order, okay? It's likely going to happen. That's the first thing. And second off, it's not the first time it's happened. The dream of Rome was a global world. The dream of Alexander the Great was a global world. The dream of Babylon, the dream of Assyria, it's the same thing over and over again. It's not the first time that a one world order has come. Okay? So don't be concerned about these things. Don't be moved to fear is what I'm saying. It is likely going to go to one world order because that's the way that it has so many times in the past. You can always expect it to just keep doing that. But don't let it be something that moves you to fear. Okay? It's something that we just have to depend on God because we are in very shaky times. Very shaky times. And, you never know from day to day what's going to happen. But it's very important that, what would be funny is after all the worrying and stuff that happens, is, and I don't mean funny in a literal way, I mean more like is if after all the worrying and stuff and about World War III and all the events that are happening, if a nuclear war just wiped out the entire Americas, I mean, after all that worrying, it would have been pretty pointless, wouldn't it have? And that's my point is, we don't know, so why waste your time worrying about it? Like, we'll know when it happens. Just be ready, have your eyes set on God, and if it happens, it happens. It's all right. It's okay. So what can we possibly take away from this? Well, there's three things I think that are very important to take away of. First off, be alert, but don't be afraid. It'll happen when it happens. Be alert, but don't be misled. Nobody knows they are being misled when they're being misled. Be alert, but don't be contentious. You don't know. You know how many times Christians have gotten into very serious arguments and debates against other Christians about end times theories? Remember that love comes before the study of the end times. Okay? You might not agree with everything that I've said today. That's okay. That really is okay. Lean into the Word, not into me. Really, it's okay if you don't agree with me. That doesn't mean we have to get in a fist fight about it. You see what I mean? Like, it's okay to disagree with somebody else, especially on the end times. I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. The people that you watch on the TV are not experts. We just don't know. So be alert, but don't be contentious. Be alert, but don't try to sway people with fear. You don't always have to be, trying to make people panic. This is a time of hope. It's a time of motivation. Because even though the world is giving us less and less, it's what an opportunity for us to not indulge in the pleasures of the flesh. What a perfect opportunity. Because we see how it's not serving people. It's not making them happy. I mean, this is all the more encouragement for us to seek God first. So be alert by keeping a close watch on your lifestyle. Is there any immorality in your heart? Is there any root of bitterness? Watch out for that. This is what you can do in light of the end. Be alert. Don't be caught up in gossip and backbiting. Don't be caught up in fights and squabbles. Don't be caught up with saying stupid things about other people. Don't do that. Don't do that. The time of the end is too close. Don't be caught off guard by living an immoral lifestyle, calling yourself a Christian. Don't do that. Don't do it. There's much more at stake than having your theory proven right or wrong. We're talking about eternity here. This is an important time. So it's a warning for us, absolutely. I don't want you to be paranoid. You are going to sin and make mistakes, and I'm not trying to make you feel paranoid, but definitely keep a close watch on your lifestyle. It's that time. Anyways, the second thing I think we can take from this is that there are some do's that we can do. Whenever the Bible is talking about the end times, it always tells us some things to do. So some good examples of this, don't be overcome by the world. And that goes for pleasure or pain. Don't be overcome by the pleasures of the world. It feels so great. It's so great. I want to do this and this and this and this. My life won't be complete unless I'm married. God, don't come until I've married. Another thing is don't be overcome by pain in the world. These are things that God says will choke out the seed growing in you. Be careful. Don't let it. Watch out for deception. There's a lot of things out there that are just not right. It's on YouTube. It's on the TV. It's in books calling themselves Christian books. Be careful. Always know more about the Bible than you know about Christian literature. Always. It doesn't matter who said it, what their reputation is, how long you followed their teachings. Bible comes first. Whatever you want to believe, Bible comes first on it. It's the final authority. I don't care if this guy you really, really liked wrote something about it. Doesn't matter. It's subject to the Bible. Always. Always, always. Don't let yourself be deceived. Another thing it always tells us in connection with the end times is pray. Don't be caught off guard. Pray. It tells us this over and over and over again. Oh, we can't do anything. The end is coming. We're just going to sit here and suffer until Jesus comes back. No, pray. Pray. That's something we can do. Another thing we can do is don't let your love grow cold, because there's going to be a reason for your love to grow cold. Don't let it grow cold. And another thing it says repeatedly is not to give up gathering together as the church. So there's a lot of different things that it tells us to do in light of the end. Don't do these things for the sake of doing them. Like, I give to tithes and I pray and I go to church because that's just the thing that I should do. No. The end is coming. Put God first. That's what it should be. And the third and last thing that I think we can take away from this is focus on the work left to be done, not the end times. We can all admit it's the end times. We can all admit bad things are happening in the world. We can all admit it's a scary time to be alive. But we can also hopefully all admit that there is still work to be done. It's not over yet. There's still nations who haven't heard. There's still people who have not heard. We're not done yet. There's still more to do moving forward. Even in Roswell, there's people who haven't heard. Back in the day, you could talk to people about Jesus, and you could know that they had at least some knowledge of it, like the Noah's Ark and stuff. But now, if you talk to people about something like, what's that? Zero knowledge of the Bible, zero knowledge of Christianity. We live in a time when there's a lot of work to be done. Don't let your focus to be on the end times. Let it be on the work that's left to do, because there's a danger in fruitless discussion. Fruitless, pointless discussion, where you get around talking about how the end time, you talk about your theories, and nobody's doing anything to reach people, but we're all sitting together talking about how it's the end times. Be careful of fruitless discussion. Focus on the work that's left to do. Lord, we thank you for where you brought us to. We thank you for your word, which is living and active and is always relevant to us. Always. Today, tomorrow, and until you come back, we're leaning into your word, your promises that you've given, your direction that you've given. Lord, I pray that in these times, the very fearful times, help us not to be moved in fear. Help us to be rocked in to you. Help us to be guided in, to be solid in you, God, that we would place our hope and our trust in you. Help us not to try and move people in fear, making our kids afraid to go to sleep at night, making people afraid and always trying to save them with the fear. Lord, your grace is what saved us, not your fear. That we were sinners, we were the worst, but you came for us. Not because of what we did, but apart from what we did. Because of your overwhelming goodness and grace, you've overtaken us with your mercy. Lord, let that be the cry of our heart and the focus of our prayers. Lord, help us to suffer for those who hate us. Help us to lay our lives down for those who are less worthy. Lord, that you would change our hearts and you would change our focus, and that during these days, these last days, we would have joy in you, peace in you,
and we'd give love to people who just don't deserve it. Lord, that you would always move in these days through the things that we do, that we would be your hands and feet in a hurting world. We love you, Lord. In all these things, Lord, we love you. Give us trust in your holy name. Amen.